Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. Joined, as I am every Sunday night or Monday night, but tonight is Sunday night. Cam Beck, Tyson Mall. Fellas, how we doing? How we doing on a Sunday night?
Recovering. My son, you guys, my whole family's been sick all week. Like my 2-year-old projectile vomited everywhere for the first time and did it 3 separate times on Friday. And yeah, I thought I had gone through the week and been fine. And then about halftime of the game, it hit me like a brick wall, and I spent the night throwing up. So,
well,
hey, you got it in early.
By the tailgate.
yeah, you got it in early. Most everybody else was throwing up after. I thought you meant you were recovering from that Raiders game today.
Yeah, once again, like it's the Raiders. Like I'm not. This is actually the first I watched most of the game today. It's the first time I've watched them this year.
I don't watch much NFL, and I caught towards the end of that game, and I just like continually, every time they would cut to Antonio Pierce, I would just laugh. I'm just like, man, the Raiders hired Antonio Pierce. Like that's a thing that happened. That's an NFL head coach.
Yeah, I think they got caught up. I mean, the players all wanted him, but I think they knew they made a mistake by hiring McDaniels and not keeping Bisaccia a couple of years ago. And they didn't want to make the same mistake again. They just went with they
made the other
wrong
decision.
They made the wrong decision. They went the other way and made the wrong decision again. So, it's the Raiders.
It's the Raiders. It's what they're good at. It's what
I'm used
to.
You know
what?
I'm used
it's
to
a good I want to make fun of that mentality, but I have adopted that mentality for Utah for the past 5 weeks now. I'm just like, it's Utah. This is what, like watching the game. You're just like, this is what you're gonna get. This is the product.
Yep,
Here we are.
Is it. And really, like that's what it is. It's like we were talking before we hit record, and it's like, I mean, it's the same issues this week yet again, and so it's tough, right? Utah loses 31-28 despite some playmaking on defense, some playmaking on special teams. Utah gets a pick 6 to keep the streak alive, extending that to 21 seasons. Pretty phenomenal record.
21 seasons. That's wild.
That's insane. Yeah. like that
is
insane.
It's one of those things too that like every time that comes up, and I know that's really important to fans, like probably more than anyone. Like that's something I have noticed Utah fans, and not that I mean like it doesn't mean anything to the players or anything. I mean like I don't think anyone other than Utah cares about that as a streak. Do you know what I mean? Like we're really proud of 21 pick sixes, 21 seasons with a pick 6 in a row. But I think like if you were like, hey, some other team, how many seasons in a row does your team have a pick 6?
Sure.
I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean
that's not a real stat.
But there are media members, national media members that have given Utah praise and their accolades for this.
Yeah. And I think it's fine. It's a fun thing but it's one of those things where I'm like, this is almost an inside joke for fans at this point, where it's like something we care more about than anyone would. Like if anyone else got an inkling of like how excited I was personally, but like lots of Utah fans were for that streak to be extended with that return from Lander Barton, They would just be like, y'all know you're gonna be 5-7, right? If it was best.
And
it's
I think
the one thing we have left, man. It's the one thing.
I get it totally.
It was legitimately like watching Utah football this season has been an exercise in like essentially, I don't know if you all were this way, but like when DVR was kind of more prominent in kind of first round, like especially with Jazz games, I would record games a lot and I would watch them later. And a lot of times you would see a score and you're like, I'm going to watch this and I know they're going to lose, but I'm going to watch it anyway. That's how watching Utah football feels for me lately. And even though I'm watching it live, like it's one of those, like, I'm going to watch this and I know they're going to lose, but I'm still going to watch it and have some fun out of it. And when that happened, I was legitimately like, let's go. We did, like, if you would have told me right then, Utah's going to lose and it's going to be relatively devastating, I would have been like, of course it is. That's what we signed up for this season.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
That's what it is. But we got this right here.
Just another nail biter, another uncomfortable finish where you're just hoping, praying for that last play, right? For that last bounce to go Utah's way. That's what it's been all season. It's been an absolute grueling experience for Utah fans this season.
I said it
man,
after
it's
the
crazy.
BYU game. Like I even started saying like that's the one thing I care about for the rest of the year. Just get a pick six. Like that's all I cared about before. Like after losing to BYU, I'm like, okay, we're
Yeah,
done now. Just keep the
that's all we
streak going,
need.
and I'll be happy.
Yeah,
Later in the game when they almost had the fumble in the backfield down on the goal line that where Campbell called the timeout like really late again, and that and other things of that nature we'll get into later I think on the pod, but like in that moment too, like that brief excitement that was kind of revived by the pick six, like, oh, is the defense going to do it again? Like, is this a scoop and score? Are we gonna? Obviously, certain powers made sure that wasn't on the table,
the timeout was called.
But yeah, but aren't they always? Aren't they always called?
Amazing.
But no, I think that it's been again like you got to find the fun in this season, and so like getting that moment made that game very fun for me. Like and getting it early too, and getting kind of that a little bit of juice like out of the gate made the game a lot more enjoyable. If that had been like a sweat something out and get it in the third quarter, it's just like
Right.
but I've already had 40 minutes of pain. Like I don't know, I don't know if I care about this right now.
It was
But
tough.
no, yeah, I mean, and to lose the way I did, like it was one of those things too. Towards the end of the game, watching Iowa State drive, like kind of in the back of my head, understanding that Utah was going to lose. Like it's just like, well, of course they're going to score. Like that's how it goes. Like and also thinking like I know there's a lot of BYU fans watching this game because if Utah wins, they clinch the championship game. And just thinking to myself like at least they're going to get to see Utah blow this too. Like, at least I have that.
Yeah.
I think I saw
I think
multiple people like would respond to like BYU fans saying that they were rooting for Utah and just using like the Michael Scott from The Office, like we're gonna lose even harder now, just because it's you. I think you guys get a benefit from it. We're gonna lose even harder.
yeah.
You know what? And sure, I'm in. I said before the game, I was just like, this is the perfect hater game. Like, you
Yep.
either win and you make Iowa State that much less likely to have their first 10-win season ever, which, reminder, Iowa State's never had a 10-win season. Or you lose and BYU's got to sweat out whether they're making it to the championship game one more week. I love it.
Dude, it was interesting, right? So with this game, obviously Utah lost 31-28. They had the lead with about 6 minutes left in that game, 28-24. And getting to that point in the game, obviously a lot transpired. We already mentioned the pick six. Utah had a block punt for a touchdown, blocked by Jackson Benny and recovered by David Washington. So Utah, got two really big momentum plays on the defense side and special teams, which they haven't had a lot of this season. And it finally, for a moment there, it felt like, hey, things are finally going our way. And, Luke Batari comes in, he marches the offense 91 yards down the field. I think I think it was 40 yards was the big run down the sideline. And then
He had
a
another
couple
one, though,
plays
too,
later,
right? Like, I think he had,
16
like, over
yards.
60 on the drive.
Yeah, yeah. So he had a 40-yard run and then a 16-yard run. The 16-yard run got him down to the goal line, and then a couple plays later, Mekhi Bernard punches it in. And 6 minutes left. About I think it was 5:50, and Iowa State takes over the ball. And like you're talking about, like you hope for the best, but there's just that the feeling has set in that it's like here it comes, man. Iowa State's gonna march down the field, and it's so
And boy, did
depressing.
they.
Yeah,
Boy, did they.
yeah, they sure did. And it like, oh man, it's depressing. Like we laugh and we're joking about it, but man, it's disheartening the way this season has gone. That defense side of the ball, like they've played a lot. They played a lot of snaps in that game. It was Iowa State was, I think, doubling them up for most of that game until those last two Batari possessions kind of got some plays back in Utah's tally. But Iowa State was just in control of that game for most of it.
before the Batari drive you mentioned, Utah was leading by 3 points or something. It's either 1 or 3 points. I can't remember. And had 100 yards of offense, like
Jeez.
like deep into the second half. It's just like, what is this team? Like
It's
Utah?
so bad.
Everyone but the offense is scoring. Utah's in the lead. It's just one of those one of those games where you're like, yeah, I mean, of course Utah's gonna lose this game. Like they're pulling things out of their freaking asses, and like this is what it takes to stay in it. And so then when Iowa State has a chance at the end, you're just like, hey, listen, the defense, they already gave you what they got. Like it's those cards are on the table.
Yeah.
Like it's like, yeah, I mean, if it's so going into the last drive, it's just like, listen, defense, whatever you can do, we're proud of you. We're proud of you for what you're doing. Who knows? Maybe Iowa State will blow it.
Let me see here. I'm trying to pull up the stats from halftime just to kind of paint the picture here. Iowa State, it was 17-13 at half. Iowa State had 243 total yards. Utah had 76. 50 of those were passing yards. 46 of those
on the first play.
Of those 50 passing yards came on the very first play of the game for Utah's offense. And yeah, that's not great. You start out with a 46-yarder and you gain 4 yards the rest of the half. Oh man, that's brutal.
I mean, we can split hairs about whether field goals are offense or special teams, but like you're leading 17-13 at half and your offense has scored 0 points.
It's crazy. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean that's the season that, like, again, it's, if you want to be critical of the defense, look at that. It's you're leading this game at halftime and your offense has not shown up yet. They are still in the locker room. They're still warming up.
Like, they were down. They were down at halftime.
Oh, yeah, down. Sorry,
17-13.
But you're in the game. Yeah, my mistake. You're in the game at halftime, and just any semblance of a chance in this game right now is because your defense, again, late in a drive too, took away points from Iowa State. Yeah. They almost certainly would have scored had that not been intercepted. So kind of basically a 10-point swing there. The punt block for a touchdown, something, again, a moment from the special teams we just haven't seen from Utah. And
since
really
2008.
Yeah, Kyle Whittingham doesn't go after punts. He just doesn't do it. And so like, and I think that's probably, I think the numbers are probably good on that, because like how we see way more problems. I shouldn't say we see, it feels like, it seems like there's much more risk involved of, giving away a first down, like extending drives for the other team, which are so maddening and just completely deflate your defense, versus getting better field position. In this case, pull it off. Not much left to lose at this point of the season. Without those two plays, like, what game?
Right.
That final drive, I saw there were some folks being critical of the final drive. And again, just like, be mad at the defense, I guess, if you want, for not coming up when it matters in a final drive. But like, they are single-handedly keeping you in that game. That final drive doesn't matter even a little bit without exclusively that side of the ball. It's just, like I said it before, I'll say it again. I don't know why this defense hasn't just absolutely beaten the crap out of the offense in the locker room yet. Just bent them over their knee and spanked their asses until they learned their lesson. Like,
yeah, I'm sure there's a few that want to. It's you just get to that point, right? Like I think that speaks to, I think it speaks a lot to Morgan Scalley and that defensive staff, just keeping those players bought in, keeping them engaged, because this season it's been shit. Like, there's just no way. It's been putrid, horrible. And the offense, again, there's really not much to break down here, because it's the same issues that it's been all season long, right? Utah just can't get production out of the passing game. Isaac Wilson hasn't made progress in the sort of meaningful way that he needs to. He's holding on to the ball too long. All of those things continue to be an issue, and yet the defense has shown up, each and every week, ready to get after it. This defense hasn't quit yet, again, yet, and yet, it's you feel for them because they're playing hard. They're trying to create plays. They've since the midway point of the season when it became clear that the message started to change that, hey, we need more havoc plays, we need more turnovers. I think Utah's done better over the last few games in terms of creating that havoc and creating turnovers. Lander Barton's now two weeks in a row with an interception. The defense has done all that it can to get Utah back in that win column, and yet the offense just finds new ways and to keep them out of it. It's brutal.
I mean, props to like guys like Junior Tafuna. He had 3 pass deflections in that game.
Yeah, dude,
That's crazy.
Yep. He was, man.
Well, I mean, and there's so many moments too where like the defense is playing so well, but again, just not getting anything from the offense, but B, getting again, I don't want to go in on officiating, but getting no help or any credit on the officiating side. Where I think of the play on the goal line with I believe it was with Calhoun, the pass interference call. But then the remaining plays, I was so impressed with. I think 3 of the 3 next, all 3 plays following that were going directly at him. Played a great play in coverage, made another tackle behind the line of scrimmage on the next one, was involved in the 3rd play, and just the way that they're able to be like, even against odds at already making stands at the line, getting a drive extended because of a penalty, and then keeping your head in it and staying focused. And the player who made that quote unquote mistake and extending that drive being the reason that you hold them out until they make a 4th goal, like a 4th and 1 play, and get their guy in. Like, just the way the defense has, even when they get punched in the mouth, responded at points in the season is really good to see and encouraging for the future of this defense. And to your earlier point, Steve, like a huge credit to Scally and this staff for keeping them focused and keeping that mentality in this team, because like, why wouldn't they have quit by now?
Right.
Like it's hard to motivate guys, and the way they've kept them motivated is inspiring.
Every reason to throw in the towel on this season, right? And yet they've just continued to show up, and that speaks to the leadership on that side of the ball. And obviously the offensive side is missing that leadership. I think that's become clear that that's what they're missing, both in terms of what's on the field with the players, but and Mekhi Bernard is doing all that he can. I don't know how much more his body can take with all that he's given to the program this season. But there's leadership missing on the coaching staff. Like who's stepping up, right? Who is the Morgan Scally on that side of the ball? There's not that guy. And obviously with Andy Ludwig, being removed from the equation, even with him there, was he that guy to rally the troops to keep him bought in? It's hard to say. He's more of an X's and O's guy, and just a tactician type of a guy, and a brilliant mind and that sort of stuff. He's not the type to rally the troops like a Morgan Scally, and I think that's what's missing on that offensive side of the ball is just an engaging personality, somebody that can get that buy-in, get the energy in the room, breathe some life into that offensive unit, because that's what's missing, man. There's no belief, there's no confidence, no sweat, there's no fight. And I think the most disheartening thing from the performance was Iowa State bullied them, right? Like just playing to and through the whistle, playing with the swagger, playing with confidence, letting Utah know when they made plays. Like Utah never responded, or somebody getting tackled, Isaac Wilson getting tackled or something like that, offensive lineman not coming to his, like those types of things that you see from teams that are that are tough, that are physical. Like we just haven't seen those from the offense side of the ball, and I think that to me is what has been that's been the biggest loss this season is that identity for Utah just in general, but more specifically on that offense side of the ball.
Yeah, I agree with you though. I don't know that Andy Ludwig was ever that guy. I would love to see
right.
a cut reel of his most inspiring coaching moments, talking to players, and I don't know. I
Well,
think it would look.
he was always in the booth too, so it makes it a little bit
Yeah.
even harder to do that.
But I
Right.
mean, what we know about Andy Ludwig, he does not scream me as the guy who's like the emotional leadership this team needs did not leave when he left the program. You know,
Listen,
it was something else.
the repetitive accuracy on that play got me fired up.
There was a little too much.
Probably get.
Can you tone the emotion down a little?
Yeah, that was too much, Steve.
Sorry. The repetitive accuracy on that throw was amazing. Is that better?
There you go.
Amazing's a pretty strong word. I think if we could tone down amazing.
The repetitive accuracy on that throw was good.
Was present.
Was there.
I observed yes. Accuracy on multiple occasions.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh man, coach, you got me fired up, man. That's great. I just think, and that's not, obviously there's a lot more to it than complimenting the players. There's a lot that goes into creating that buy-in, creating that culture, right? It's about the relationships, and I think that's something that Morgan Scalley is really good at, is cultivating meaningful relationships and that buy-in. And I think that is what is missing above all else on that offense side of the ball right now within the staff. And I think it's got to be a major point of focus, is getting a personality that can reinstill confidence, in those players on that side of the ball, whoever's going to be here on that side of the ball. We're getting a good look at the future with some of these young guys getting more playing time, and we'll see. But I think that's got to be a big priority for Utah in that offensive coordinator position. But we've talked about it. The referees. I want to ask you guys, since Mark Harlan's episode against BYU, we'll call it. This was the first home game back at Rice Eccles Stadium. It was interesting. You don't notice it maybe until the end of the game, till you're looking at the box score and you're looking at numbers, and then you see Iowa State one penalty for 5 yards, which didn't come until the fourth quarter. Utah finished
Utah's last drive, right?
Yeah,
was like the fourth quarter with like under a minute left.
Yes,
and it was dead to it was undeniable, impeachable. Yeah,
you
like
had
the guy would. Yeah, if they hadn't called that, it was choice. What is happening here?
Yeah, no choice.
They still talked it over too.
Yeah,
they still had the ref still had a meeting.
Yeah,
like that's one where you the whistle blows and the flag's thrown and the head referee just immediately turns his mic on and says offsides on the defense. Like
right. They're like, okay, do we really need to call this? And it's like, well, I mean, he was very clearly offsides. Again, do we really need to call this? And, you're looking at it and, Utah finishes with 6 penalties, 57 yards. That's not crazy, right? But beyond that, just the penalties, there's been videos and stuff of referee interactions with the fans.
I still can't get over that. I still can't get over the official in just jawing at fans in the crowd like he's an opposing player. It's one of the wildest things I've ever seen.
I've never seen that. Never.
I've genuinely, you see a lot of fans yelling at officials, right? And officials usually do a really good job of keeping distance from those fans. Or even in rare cases, you'll see them address the stadium conditions, and very rare, not even once a year. I feel like you see it to where there'd be hey, the fans need to chill or we're going to penalize this team.
Yeah.
I think the only time I've even seen something like it this year was at what was it, Georgia and Texas, when all the stuff was getting thrown on the field.
Oh,
and,
yeah, where they got bullied into pulling the flag.
yeah. And like, not only did that obviously not happen, but like the ref was like, I'm gonna take it upon myself to go address these people and let them know who's who and who they're playing with tonight. Cause I know there's this other game going on, but I'm also here. And for like waving his metaphorical gun around at the people in red in the stands. Like,
he's like the embodiment of the meme where a guy's like pointing at himself in the mirror. It's like, make this about you. You matter in this situation.
yeah, you go out there and make this about you. I've never seen anything quite like it. I've never seen such
I've never seen that.
Such a like just deliberate act of fan, not even just interaction. It's not like he was over there just like, I'd like to hear what y'all have to say.
How's your night going?
Yeah, you guys are you guys seem fun, and tell me about Salt Lake. He was over there giving it back to fans who, to be fair, were giving it to him. Like they weren't
so though.
They weren't out there. They weren't, I don't think they were being inquisitive so much as they were being accusatory. And I think, I think it was also fair, but he was over there to let them know that I am the captain now.
Yes. Yeah. So do we buy into the this being a sort of punishment for Harlan's outburst a couple weeks ago? Because I'm telling you,
it's probably not, but like there's so many things that it pushes you that way.
The fact that we're asking the question like legitimately,
listen, hell yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Listen, it would never
crazy.
Like, I have a job. You're telling me I'm not petty at my job to people who are petty back at me? Hell yeah, I am.
Buddy.
Somebody calls me out in public about my performance and how unprofessional I am like that. I'm gonna be like, yeah, you're about to see how unprofessional I can be. You wanna see what I can do? Like it's like, listen, if someone here, to give the refs ego way too much stroking here, if there is a god on the field during the game, they are wearing stripes. And I think that was them telling Mark Harlan, like, hey, you don't fly too close to the sun here because we will burn you. And
we'll engulf your ass.
I think, like, listen, whether or not it's, you'd obviously never get any type of confession for it. I don't need there to be I don't need it to actually be happening. But like, I know that human beings are petty, and I know that human beings don't like being called out for their job performance on national television and having it go viral amongst college football because of what Mark Harlan said. And like, again, what Mark Harlan said was ridiculous and childish at the time. Like it was a very bad, a poor reflection on himself. Like, and to that I offer a truce to the officials. We will give you Mark Harlan, and please,
straight up,
please give us back the respect we deserve.
I think Andrew put it very well on Twitter. Just said Utah's going to lose every close call in perpetuity from now on. Like both pass interference calls on Calhoun were suspect at best. Like the first one, yeah, he didn't turn his head, but he also didn't impede the guy at all. The guy was just still running.
That was falling out of bounds. Yeah.
And the second one, Higgins had him by the collar the whole route. Higgins was grabbing him too. Like, I just feel like it's any sort of like 50-50 call, like they're just like, it feels like Utah's going to get the shit end of the stick from now on. I'll be the wet blanket and say that it was a hold on the field goal. But the fact that hasn't been called in like 30 some odd years in a college football game is insane.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if Utah had blocked that field goal, it would have been because they committed a penalty that didn't get called, right? Like they 100% grabbed those guys and pulled them down.
But it's crazy. No, you're taught to do that. You are taught to do that. You're
But,
taught
like-
to do that on blocking field goals. Is you're taught to grab the guy and pull him out of the way.
But like unambiguously, you cannot watch that replay and be like, they were holding him.
I don't know what replay you guys are watching. I can't see it. What are you guys looking at? Whose video recording are we talking about here? Who's phone recording?
But yeah, listen, if I'm Brett Yormark, yeah, I'm probably doing the same thing. We're talking about the guy who's in bed with the WWE. Like, of course they're staging the officiating.
Yeah.
Have you even seen Ready to Rumble? Have any of you even seen Ready to Rumble? You're telling me Brett Yormark isn't telling the officials how to script this thing out? You don't think they're out there like, hey, listen, King's gonna win. You're gonna tap in after 15. You're just gonna do the finishing move. You're gonna tap, and then he's just like, listen, officials, that's what I said. Now, but this is what's gonna happen. All right. Watch that game again through a WWE lens and tell me that the Brett Yormark isn't the commish.
I totally got those vibes with the referee, with the video of the referee, like John with that is straight out of the WWE playbook. Is a ref showboating a little bit, giving it to the fans. Like that's straight written.
It's when Harlan went on his tirade, it was and I'm spacing on his name now, the WWE, like the owner,
Vince McMahon.
Yeah, Vince McMahon. It's the Vince McMahon video of like when he steps up from the interview, he's like, "Where is he? Where is he? You stay here. You take me there. Let's go." They go running out of the studio. That was Brett Yormark.
Oh man.
I was gonna say, if Brett Yormark comes out like to Big 12 Media Days next year and uses Vince McMahon's "No Chance in Hell" entrance music, like
he should.
I might pass out.
He should. Brett Yormark should come to Rice Eccles Stadium and heel turn Mark Harlan. Like he absolutely should.
We need to find the script. We've got to find the script. It's got to be out there somewhere.
They're going to be putting Utah games on pay-per-view any day.
Any day now. Oh, man. Jeez Louise. Yeah, so it's interesting with the refs. And obviously the Big 12 and Utah is not the only team dealing with referee issues. Feels like ours are a little more deliberate. But, across the board, you're seeing issues with referees and complaints about referees. Like, it's time. It's just time. Let's get a full-time referees.
Oh my God.
Have them an entire network for every conference. It's all under one house. We don't have different refs for different conferences. We just need one big entity to serve the country, and that's what we need. Like, we have so much money in the sport now. How do we not already have this in place? It's insane to me.
Yeah, it is very, very wild when you consider everything that college refs are asked to do, and then remember that it's just like, this is a side gig. This
is a side gig, yeah.
Like these guys are working day jobs, like 9 to 5s, and flying out to locations for this game. Like, and officiating is hard. Like,
it is.
It's like football officiating is very hard. Like NFL officials
yelling at you. You got players yelling at you. You got fans that you're yelling at.
You got athletic directors yelling at you on the field, coming out to you on the field.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, like it is ironic that as Pac-12 fans, we complain so much about officiating, and then we traded in incompetence for just pure fraud. And now we're just like, oh, it could have been much worse. Like, we always thought that USC was getting all the calls, and now it's just like, no, this is what it looks like when the other team gets all the calls.
Oh man, it's time. Like, let's get everybody under one roof. Let's train them, and let's forget about these conference affiliations, these regional ties, whatever it is, however they determine it. Like, we just need it to be its own entity. And honestly, we need to put these refs, in a post-game pressure and allow them to be questioned, because it's BS that we don't. We have to march the players up there that just suffered an emotional loss. We have to question them and what they were thinking on plays that went wrong. And yet the referees who, again, all respect because this is a side gig. They do work whatever sort of jobs they do. But like, come on, give them a mic, give them a table. They need to answer question. They need to answer for some of these questionable things that they call, that they see, that they call, and that sort of stuff. Like, it's just time. Like, they're grown-ups, they can handle it, and if they can't, that they're, let them go. Like, it's beyond old now.
I'd even let it be Monday. Let it be a thing where it's just like, hey, submit your requests for the, like media members
like
at
the
the end of every
NBA
game.
does.
Yeah, it's just like, listen, there were certain plays that were under review. We're gonna bring certain officiating crews under some of us and ask them questions and publicize. Like, that'd be great. I would even say, if we don't want to go that far, start with let coaches and players criticize officiating.
Yes.
Like, finding them for, like, this is some, I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but like, the reason we like freedom of speech is we believe that it allows people to say ungoverned truths. And I think that can be the case with officiating. Like, if you pay these people and they get full-time salaries, this becomes their job. I think they are also subject to criticism from the people for whom they are making these calls. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for, like, listen, Mark Harlan, is it appropriate for you to do those things? Obviously right now, no, probably not ever. But if Kyle Whittingham wants to be like, hey, listen, that third and whatever call that gave them, that Kyle Whittingham wants to be like, that holding call that gave BYU the game at the end of the game, that was bullcrap. And I want that officially reviewed. The idea that he would get fined for that is absurd. We all have eyes. We all understand that it's just like, that was the biggest moment of this game. Everything else that happened led to this moment, and an official decided. They should have to, they should, if not answer to that, it should be subject to discussion from the people who are suffering the consequences of it. I've always thought it was ridiculous that players and coaches would get fined for questioning the officials.
Yep. Referees typically about $24,000, $36,000 for a season's work. That's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. 12 games, you're coming home with an extra 24,000, 36,000, whatever it is. It's not bad. It's time though. Like, make it a full-time gig, make it a full-time position, have these guys refereeing around year round, get them out to events, spring events, whatever it needs to be. Like, it's just time. Like, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
For comparison, NFL referees make at least $200,000.
Yes.
Holy
make a lot.
God.
Yeah, it's a big jump.
But yeah, like you said, make it even. You don't even have to make it just like an NCAA thing. Like, make like a countrywide referee, I don't know, organization that gets contracted out to, college football, to the USFL, to, any other, I don't know, organized football organization. And just, there you go. Like, make it a full-time job.
Yep. That's where we need to go. And get rid of the conference affiliations. These guys don't need to report to conferences. Like, get that bias out of there, eliminate that, and just allow them to be their own entity. And again, allow them to be questioned and allow them to be criticized, because it's 2024. They can handle it.
Because if you think there's not bias, you're crazy.
Yeah. Oh,
you're nuts to think if there's not bias somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Here's a thought.
Saw it on Saturday night.
If we're already hiring professionals who are working, can we get some NFL guys to have side gigs, coaching, like reffing college games?
Yeah. Why can't we double up with the NFL refs? There's a couple of them that made the transition from college to NFL. One of them was a Pac-12 ref. The guy that gave the awkward pat in an Arizona game. Do you guys remember that? It was like,
he
like gave an awkward pat to an Arizona player. I think it was actually Arizona versus Utah.
Wasn't it after like the coin toss or something?
It was at a coin toss. I think they were going into overtime, and gave like the most awkward, just like, all right. But no, he's refereeing in the NFL. I think he's actually refereeing this Los Angeles Eagles game right now. But why can't
Los
they double
Angeles
dip?
Eagles.
Oh yeah, sorry. Why can't they double dip? They're not doing anything Saturday. It's a quick flight from Utah to Los Angeles. Why can't they do that? Why can't we use these NFL refs?
Or just like the head ref, like because there's obviously not enough to
Yeah,
go around. Just give them, be
yeah,
like, hey, listen, every head official for every college football game will be an NFL guy who's there to just oversee and kind of just supervise, make sure all these children who are also calling penalties like kind of know what they're doing and understand
yeah.
how this goes. So that when they make some kind of boat, like, just kind of gut check at halftime, like, hey, I just want to call out that there's no penalties on Iowa State so far, and that's something we should just consider looking into in the second half. But
All right, let's switch gears here. We're not the referee cast, the referee block cast. Let's get back to Utah and talking about that. Obviously, 7-game losing streak now with the loss to Iowa State. Crazy. That's a crazy number. I think they haven't. Oh, somebody's going to sleep.
that was me. So my bedtime reminder.
Mine's going off at 10:19. So
Mine
I
goes
know
off
that
at
is.
8:29.
Oh,
Oh
dang.
gosh.
Jeez, Tyson. Uh,
Oh man, I got two kids. I get up at 4 a.m. every day.
You are a mature adult. um, with Utah, obviously the issues we know what they are, right? What sort of changes need to be made as we get into the offseason? Obviously, a lot of talk about the offensive coordinator position. We already kind of talked about, sort of the personality that they need in that role. But what sort of changes does Utah need to make to just kind of, man, like shake this, like get out of their own way. Like it just feels like there's, I don't know. They need to hit the reset button. They need to clean house a little bit. Like what else? What does Utah need to do this offseason to like truly hit the reset button in your eyes?
I think they need some injection of or some aspect of that offensive emotional leader that we referenced earlier.
Yeah.
I think they've relied a long time on that being a player. And I think for the past 7 seasons or however many, really 5 seasons, more accurately, they've relied on that being Cam Rising. And for a lot of reasons, that's just not sustainable and probably not something you're going to be able to rely on next season. I think that they need that to be a more consistent person in the program and someone who can be more of an off the field leader and inject that energy into the larger team. And someone who, is not at the mercy of injury risk or other transfer or NIL risk, some more consistency when it comes to emotional leadership on the offensive side. I think the defense has that in spades. I think that Morgan is huge for that. I think Sharif Shah, that's put like one of his better qualities as a coach. If I'm, and not to take away from the rest of his qualities, but the players and many of the fans clearly want to run through a wall for that guy. I think that the offense needs some of that juice. And so there's obviously an X's and O's component of it. But what we've seen from the past 7 games are just like 11 zombies who are going out on offense. They have absolutely no swagger when they're going out. And there's some aspect of, again, like we want them to have fun and we want this to look like they're having fun. I want them to believe that they can have fun. And I don't
Yes.
think that they do right now.
Yeah, it's really hard to watch. I mean, like you said, like there's no energy on the offensive side of the ball. There's no, it barely even seems like there's camaraderie on there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
there's not a lot of guys celebrating with each other. And it's tough to see, like you said, like a lot of it is X's and O's and, guys not getting put in positions that they can succeed in or that play to their strengths. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is if it's the offensive coordinator or, we don't know, but if Witt does retire, like the big thing I keep coming back to is look at a lot of the teams around the country with younger head coaches that kind of bring that. Look at Dan Lanning,
Look at
Kenny Dillingham. Like, you get a guy like that at the top who is, and we know Scally's that guy. We know Scally's that kind of coach. And again, it's shown too when you watch the defense this year. So whether it's the new OC or, if Witt does decide that this is, the year to be done and Morgan takes over, like, combine that with an OC that is that way too. Like, I think that can do a lot of good for the team.
Yes.
And then obviously, once again, just getting the players that can do it and will buy into that attitude.
And the reason I think this is so important, obviously X's and O's experience, play calling experience, like those things obviously are important, right? But having somebody that can instill that belief, instill that confidence, essentially be a source of the culture and brand that you want to embody, right? Like that's what Scally brings to that defense. Is he's built those relationships with those players on that side of the ball where he can draw from them. He can, give to them as well when needed, when necessary, which has been a lot this season, much more than previous seasons. But to instill that sort of belief and confidence, is something that I think, and energy in life, like Cam, you said it best, like this team doesn't look like they're having fun. It doesn't look like they enjoy being out there with one another. And, that speaks to just a lack of belief in each other, excitement for one another. And I think that is with the change in college football, where it has become much more of a transactional business than what it was before, where you could bring a high school kid in, have him develop over 2 or 3 years, however long he needed to be in the program, learn from those above him, and learn the ways of the pro. You don't have that ability to instill your culture in them in the same way that you could before, right? Where you could rely on players to set that example. You have these guys for a year or two at a time now, sometimes 3, whatever, but you have these guys for a much smaller period of time. You need coaches to be the guys instilling that in them now. It can't be so, when you have it with the players, that's great, but that can't be your primary source anymore. It has to be from the coaches, instilling that belief, that energy, that life. That's what this offense needs right now. And I think that has to be a big priority for Morgan Scally, for Kyle Whittingham in this offensive coordinator search, is finding somebody that can bring that to this team.
Yeah, I think you touched on a very good point with the NIL stuff and just building camaraderie. How do you build camaraderie with guys where so much of Whittingham's really mentality is bringing guys in, developing them, but even maybe as equally as developing them on the field is developing that family mentality of that these guys are guys you've known for your entire time in this program. You've come up together, you've sweat and bled together, and that just doesn't exist anymore in the NIL era. And so, like, how do you either adjust your philosophy to be less reliant on those types of relationships for your players, or how do you create those types of relationships more quickly? And that's something. Sorry.
I was just going to say, and the constants that are going to be with the program now for extended periods of time are going to be the coaches, right? Like, those are going to be the guys that are there for longer periods of time as players come and go. So it has to be coming from them, in my opinion.
Absolutely agree. I think that offense is obviously the biggest focus, and like I want to throw something out there that I just genuinely don't understand and has perplexed me. I don't know what would need to change, what even can change, or if this is simply something that is dumb luck and that Utah's gotten the short end of it. Utah cannot operate on offense with the injuries that they've sustained for the past 2 seasons, and not just at quarterback, but at other positions as well. It's something that, like I said, I don't have an easy answer. I don't think they have a strength and conditioning problem necessarily. I don't think the players have a diet problem or bone structure problems, but like something, whether it's random chance or whether it's something harder to identify and that can be changed. You can do everything right with everything we just mentioned. And if you're on QB 4 and 5, or like if you're down to 1 or 2 QBs on your roster, neither of which are your starter at the beginning of the season, you just can't win very many games. And so like Utah's on their 5th string quarterback right now.
That's insane.
It's one of those things that when you say out loud, go, yeah, of course they're losing football games when they're down to this few players. And like when guys do come in and have moments, they immediately get hurt and go out. It's like I said, I don't know if it's something I genuinely don't know any type of data or have any insight into injury situations across teams, whether that's something that can be coached or whether it's that something that can be trained or conditioned to improve. But it simply has to, if there's any effort that can be made in that way, because you just can't operate at this type of loss at quarterback specifically.
I know that these sports science teams, they monitor a player's workload, like how much work are they putting out in a practice session throughout the week. So they do have data that sort of measures how much a player can how much energy a player exerts, right, in a practice. And they have tools and data that they can utilize. I don't know the data with Utah. I haven't heard any. I don't know. But, essentially sports science teams are there to help promote, recovery, rest, and that sort of stuff, to make sure that these players are operating and playing at a good, healthy level. Like that is, at the core of it, what a sports science team is about. And, you probably need to take a closer look, or maybe give more credence to the sports science team and what their recommendations are for players, in terms of recovery. Kyle Whittingham has talked about how they've embraced more of an NFL model with their practice schedules and going a little bit lighter, and that sort of stuff. But I think you need to continue to evaluate what is going on between your strength and conditioning program, your sports science program, and figure out what can be done to promote greater health. Because yes, a lot of these are crazy situational injuries, but the amount that we've seen over the last 2 seasons, and even we could probably go back to 2022 and probably find a similar number of injuries. We weren't on quarterback 5 or quarterback 4 that season, but there were probably a number of injuries that season too. And so it's just, you got to review everything. So I'm with you, like in terms of changes and that sort of thing, got to figure out a way to promote greater health and strength and that sort of stuff with your players for next season, because the amount of injuries that you've dealt with the last couple of years has been brutal.
One thing that I've kept thinking about, and this is kind of like a fun side story, but talking about like practice models and stuff. I was thinking about there's a D3 team in Minnesota, St. John's. Their coach he was there for like 40 years, won like multiple national championships. The D3 Heisman's named after him. His practices were no pads, no whistles, no tackling, and they won. They were like perennial, like for 30 years, like D3 football powerhouse.
Wow.
The whistles feels out of place there. I don't know.
It does. I know. The first, like when I read about it the first time, I was like, that seems. And then the other funny thing was like he got mad if you called him coach. He had his players call him by his first name.
Oh man, that's
Man, I know that's
always coach for me.
Shout out to Josh Newman, who would appreciate that. Nobody hates calling coach more than Josh Newman, and I appreciate that about you, Josh, if you're listening.
He hates it. It's funny.
I mean, honestly, if you think about it, it's a little weird because like anytime I've seen like any of my like old high school coaches, the first thing I say hi coach. I don't call them by their name. They'll always be coach to me.
If you're their player, I think it's one thing. But to Josh's point, it's just like when the media is like, "Hey, coach, what do you?" I think he's just like, "Hey, this guy's not your coach."
No, it's a title though, like a city state official, right? Like that's my thing. It's a sign of respect. Okay.
All right, I'm just gonna need you to call him Mr. Coach in that case.
Mr. Yeah.
Mr. Coach.
Man. I think I need to make a change and just embrace Kyle or Morgan and drop the coach.
Listen, if anything, this is the season to do it, to drop Kyle. Can you imagine? Whit would notice if you stopped calling him coach and started calling him Whit. He'd be like, Kyle. Whoa, I feel that. Whoa. I feel that.
Maybe I need to do that. Send a message. We're fed up, Kyle.
I'm sorry. Coach is going to bowl games.
Just boom, low blow. Oh man, send him out with a low blow. All right, so offensive coordinator, we talked about that, and obviously, we'll talk more about it as we get closer to the off season, which is a week away because we're not going bowling. But we'll talk more about potential candidates and that sort of stuff. So. Beyond that, the offensive coordinator position, obviously strength and conditioning, sports science staff, whatever, in terms of improving injury, health, that sort of stuff. Like obviously, changes there need to be made. But with the offensive side of the ball, I think the defensive staff is pretty good shape there. Obviously, whenever Morgan does take over, going to have to find a new safeties coach probably, and that could be certainly interesting to see. The candidates for that, but with the offense, I wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, I think Bajakian, we've seen enough from Bajakian to kind of know that, hey, appreciate you stepping in.
Bye. I was optimistic, but the Northwestern got rid of the guy.
Yeah. And so and obviously a tough situation for him to step into, but yeah, I think we've seen enough there. So obviously you can count on that. Beyond that, we could see additional staff changes. When you have a season like this with the struggles that Utah has experienced, it impacts so much, right? You're starting to see it now with the recruiting. You're seeing guys flip and that sort of stuff, and it just impacts so much of not only you this season but your future. And so I think it's important for Utah to be, pretty honest with how things went this season, and be pretty critical of things on that side of the ball, and figure out what needs to change, and that could lead to some significant changes potentially. So I do think, we've talked about it, at the Utah Blockcast Discord. But we've talked about it that there's certainly some motivation to turn things around in terms of the boosters and the support around the program, to provide the program with what they need to get it done. And Utah is going to certainly be cleaning house this offseason, and the roster is going to look pretty different, I think, especially on that offense side of the ball. So that'll be interesting, and obviously I think we'll learn a lot about that over the next few months. So, fellas, any final thoughts before we wrap this one
up? Two quick things. One, if Brian Ferenc is available, I think you have to get him at this point.
Oh dear God!
Hey, progress is progress.
Would he have been worse?
Don't look at Maryland's performance compared to Utah's this
man.
season if you want to disagree with me.
Oh no.
I'm
Is he in Maryland
absolutely yeah. Maryland was just like, you know who we should hire was that guy that Iowa State famously ran out of town, or Iowa famously ran out of town because he was so abysmal. They're like, we should get that guy.
Who
Anyway,
was
Utah,
also the son of the
consider
head
that guy.
coach. Like, just
Right.
just add another layer to that.
But no, the other thing I was gonna say is Utah fans, your season's basically, your season's done. For all intents and purposes, you've got the one last game, but it's frankly kind of meaningless since you're not going bowling. The hating does not have to stop though. Hater season does not end until the season ends, and frankly, it goes deep into the off season. You want Iowa State and you want Arizona State this week. Those two win. Nothing else matters when it comes to tiebreakers. You want at least those two teams to win. If those two win, that's all you need.
Does Colorado still have a shot at this thing? What do they need?
They do.
There's like an 8-team tie at the top right now. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah,
so 4 teams, but yeah.
If Colorado wins, I think there's technically 9 teams who technically could still make the title game. But if Colorado wins, they're not necessarily in automatically.
Yeah.
I think if Arizona State and I mean, obviously the thing we're beating around is if Arizona State and Iowa State, excuse me, if both of those two teams win, there's no scenario that BYU gets in.
Yeah.
If one of those teams loses, there are lots of scenarios where BYU gets in.
Gotcha. Well, go Devils, go Clones.
I've always been a big Iowa Cyclones fan, and I've thought it was, frankly, a travesty that they haven't had 10 wins in their entire history. And I hope they end that streak this week.
And go Red Cougars.
Yes.
And I think our love for Arizona State is well documented on this podcast.
It is.
Just don't go listen to any of it.
Yes. Appreciate you, fellas. This has been the Utah Blockcast. Signing off.